Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Expert to Authority show. My name is Simone Vincenzi, and I'm your host. This is the show for coaches, speakers, and trainers who want to grow their businesses while making an impact in the world. And today we are talking about money, in particular, money psychology. It's a topic that I always love because it doesn't matter how many conversations I have about money, there is always something that we can learn about. There's always something that we can learn about our habits. There's always something about we can learn in terms of practical strategies and techniques. And there is always something that we can learn about ourselves. And this is why I love this topic today. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about money psychology. And before I introduce our guest today, I want you to know that if you like what you're hearing and what you will hear during this interview, then you can go and scroll down through the show notes. You have a link that will direct you to the shredmethod.com. So that's the website, the shredmethod.com, where you can find a free saving calculator and a masterclass to go deeper on the topic that we are talking today. So check it out, it's in the show notes, or go directly to the shredmethod.com. Now, to introduce our guest today is a renowned financial expert, a literacy expert, celebrated author, captivating speaker who has delivered over 1,000 speaking engagements worldwide. He's done a very provoking TED Talk, which have amassed over 6 million views on YouTube. He has become a prominent figure in the field of finance, and his groundbreaking documentary, Broke, Busted, and Disgusted, aired on CNBC and continues to be screened in numerous high school and colleges nationwide, inspiring young minds to take control of their financial future. Without further ado, please welcome Adam Carroll. Adam, good to have you here.
Simone, good to be with you. I'm excited about our conversation today.
All right, let's talk about money. And I want to go straight to the point. What is the biggest thing that you have learned about yourself when you started exploring the topic of money?
The biggest thing I learned about myself. This was actually a lesson that I learned at one point, Simone, that I think is really helpful to understand for other people, specifically if you're an entrepreneur. So I know your show is for coaches and speakers and experts, but there is this idea that what we do can be risky when you hang a shingle and you go out on your own and you're trying to make a business work, that there's an element of risk that's attached to that. And years ago, as I started digging into money, I realized that there is a difference between taking a calculated risk and being risky. And so calculated risks are what I really enjoy taking because I know I have a really good chance of winning on calculated risks. And I try and avoid things that are risky for me. So for me, it was almost a lesson around my risk profile, my risk tolerance, that I'm willing to go take a calculated risk if I know that I have a pretty good chance of winning, but I tend to avoid things that are risky.
Can you give an example of something that you avoided that because you find risky, but for you, something that a calculated risk that actually paid off?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned in my intro that I did a documentary on student loan debt. And candidly, I love the way you said it, broke, busted, and disgusted. But it really was. It was all about uh, what I was learning and talking with college students all across the country about how much debt they had taken on from university. And I was going to write a book because that was my business model at the time, was write a book, go speak on the book, sell speaking engagements, sell books to the group, and wash, rinse, repeat over and over and over again.
Mhm.
And a good friend of mine said that would make a great documentary. We should do that as a documentary. And I said, you're right, it would. I don't know the first thing about making documentaries. And to me, that felt very risky. And he said, yeah, me neither. Let's do it. So we crowdfunded the documentary, but this was sort of the magic piece was I said, I want to do it and I want it to be successful, but I want to know that there's no money of our own put in it. And we just get support from our community. And if they say, oh, I support this, then I know it will be a success. And so one of the lessons that I learned in this was there are always people in our community that are willing to help us in one way, shape, or form. We just have to ask. And so I wrote, several emails, marketing pieces, if you will, sent them out to what I call my Power 100 list, which are the 100 people in our life that like, love, and respect us. And I said, this is what I want to do. I'm looking for support and validation that this is worthwhile. If you think this would be valuable, would you consider contributing any amount, 25, 50, $100, $500, you name it. And this is what happened, Simone. One of my friends reached out and said, how can I donate $5,000 to your cause? And in that moment, I thought, well, this is now a calculated risk. I know this is going to be successful. There are people who want to support this. And so lo and behold, we produced the film. We raised almost $70,000 in 45 days. And we ended up selling the documentary to CNBC. And it went on to make hundreds of thousands of dollars in royalties and licensing deals. So that's just one example of how it could have been very, very risky. And we decided to turn it into more of a calculated risk.
And what has been something risky that you have avoided, that immediately you said, this is too risky, it's not for me?
A good friend of mine invited me to a real estate auction where I was on the steps of a property and they're auctioning off this property to the highest bidder. And I remember we started bidding and I thought, we don't know it. We don't know enough about this house. We don't know what the previous tenants did to it. We don't know if the water pipes are burst. We know nothing about the house. And we were down to like maybe the last 3 or 4 bidders. And I said, this doesn't feel good. This is risky because we don't know enough. And we backed out of it. And it was a good thing we did. The water pipes had burst inside the walls. There was mold in one of the bathtubs that had been filled with water, which then got into the walls. So that was one risk avoided.
What's what I want to now know from you, because this is all part of money psychology.
Yeah.
Right? This is you mentioned risk profile and risk tolerance. What's your own risk profile, which is the biggest thing that you've learned about yourself? How much can you take on? What feels risky to you? So do you have almost like a checklist or a way of thinking to process to help you evaluate, which is for everyone listening right now? What is something risky, or when something is not risky or can be a calculated risk? Because particularly right now, we are in a boom crypto market, right? So everyone who is selling crypto now woke up after the past 2 years where it crashed. And you can see that every single time, whether it's maybe stocks or shares, they plummet and then they go up, and then everyone is like, hey, you need to invest in the stock market. Housing market, you can see the trends, and people then don't have a framework on understanding where am I going to put my money in? What's risky to me? What's not risky to me? Then everything can look amazing. Everything can look, oh my God, this is such a great opportunity. I need to do it right now. Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. So what's the thinking behind it?
Yeah, this is such a good question. And it's a good question because I invested in cryptocurrency probably 5 years ago, almost 7 years ago. And people said, oh, what are you doing? This is crazy. Why are you putting money in crypto? This is just a scam and Bitcoin's a scam and so on and so forth. And yet I had done, I think, enough research to know that this was a calculated risk, that the money that I put into cryptocurrency some years ago, which today is, it's easily worth 3 or 4 times what I put in. And not that that makes me look like a genius. It just, I think there was an element of, I'm going to take a calculated risk. I think this is going to go up. People do this with the housing market or stocks, just like you mentioned, right? So one of the things, and I'll use housing as an example, Simone, one of the common scenarios that I find with real estate investors is they're very comfortable with the risk of borrowing money and putting on their rental properties. And the goal is buy another one and another one and another one. It's all someone else's money anyway. The challenge for me when I look at some of their situations is if 1 or 2 or 3 tenants decide not to pay you for a month or 2, it all could come crumbling down if they've not built the right foundation, with the right amount of equity or capital or liquidity that's available to them. And this is where, for me, the money psychology comes in, that some people are wading into the deep end of the real estate investor pool without a real strategy of what happens if times get tough. Because I think they're trusting in whatever the latest program they've seen on TikTok or Instagram that they've bought, telling them what to do and how to buy properties the right way. But maybe they're struggling to make ends meet on their own. And that's why they think this is the silver bullet. And so I think deep down, and maybe this is circling back, is I think deep down, people need to understand their psychology around money before they learn the tactics and the technical aspects of money, because so much of the decisions we're making are based on emotional reasons in the first place. So if we understand why we're making them, then maybe we can be more informed in the decisions we make and how we choose to handle our personal finances.
I'm completely with you. We are definitely on the same page because
Yeah.
um, when thinking about the risk profiles, there is something that you said. I think there is a lot of gold in there. You done your research.
Yeah.
You knew that what made it a calculated risk
Right.
and what's risky is the unknown. If you
Right.
don't know something is risky. So I remember, for example, I did a retreat in Thailand and I wanted to bring all my clients to Thailand. It's like, okay, let's do it. I booked this venue. There was this luxury villa. It cost me about $80,000 to rent it. It was for a week. It's going to be a great experience for our clients. It's going to
Yeah.
be amazing. So we asked people, say, oh, would be interested in the retreat. Yes, yes, yes. So we got a lot of yeses without testing the pricing, without testing the timing of the retreat and so on. Long story short, we didn't fill out the retreat and actually ended up costing us more than $60,000. That's how much we
Wow.
lost. So it wasn't a good move. So we were
Yeah.
there in this great place with 3 villas booked, 5 people.
Oh my
They had a
gosh.
great time. They
Oh, I
definitely had
bet they
a good
did.
time. Luxurious experience. I was there trying to make my best to show up for them, but inside I was like, I was crying inside. But again, is the idea of a calculated risk. I didn't know enough about
Yeah.
people would join before booking that. So it was a risky decision. Now I'm
And
running retreats in a different way.
I bet you are. And while it was an expensive lesson, it's probably a lesson that you'll rely on over and over and over again on future events too, right?
Never made that mistake again.
Yeah.
Always have a
I,
waiting list for any event that I'm doing. If I don't fill the waiting list, I'm not filling the event.
so
So
this
that's
this is this is an interesting kind of topic too, or line of logic, is that when I was investing in real estate and I owned a number of doors and enjoyed the process, but realized that where I was really able to make more money and leverage the amount of time or the value of my time was in speaking engagements and writing and creating content. Um, but when I was buying properties or looking at buying properties, to your point of having a waiting list for a retreat, we would post an ad on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or another site where rental properties would be listed. And I would put a dummy ad in place for this property to see what kind of appetite there was for the location and the property itself. And I knew that if I had gotten a list of 10 or 15 people who were interested in renting the place, I would then proceed to go through the process of buying it, but I would hold an open house before I ever closed on the house. So that I knew as soon as I closed it, I would have a tenant for that property. And that for me is again sort of calculated risk. When people say, oh, I bought this house and now I'm having a hard time putting someone in it. My thought process is, why did you not do that heavy lift on the front end to
yeah.
make it a calculated risk? In the end, it tended to be a little more risky for you.
No, I love it. I love it. I love the thinking. I love the thinking. It's like sell it before it's ready. Sell it
That's
before you
right.
actually invest. You invest the money, and it's a great lesson for any person who is here launching an event, launching an online program, a group program. Because
Yeah,
we were talking about the investment. You have investment of money, but also you're investing time. So in this way, you know that the time where you're investing somewhere actually is worthwhile. You're going to have a
indeed.
positive return.
Indeed.
I want to know more about the shred method now
Yeah.
because you have developed methodology that people
Yes.
can find at the shredmethod.com. So everyone check it out. You can scroll in the show notes as well, and it's the shredmethod.com. So let's talk about the shred method. What is it? How was it
Yeah.
created, and what's included?
Well, first and foremost, it's a unique cash flow strategy that takes the money that you're already making, applies a little bit different logic than what most people use in terms of where their money goes. And the end result is the average shredder that we call our shred method users could have their entire debt load paid off, mortgage included, somewhere between 3 and 7 years. And so we teach people effectively how to use the bank's money against the bank. And in the end result, you will save tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in the process. So that's what it is, how it came about. Um, one of the things that's common certainly in the US, and I would guess in the UK and other parts of Europe too, Simone, is people are questioning, will I have enough money to survive in retirement?
100%.
There's some uncertainty around, whether or not I'll outlive my money and what our expenses will be long into the future. And in the US especially, there are statistics out there that will suggest 2/3 of the population doesn't have enough saved to retire efficiently. And it's a two-pronged problem. Number one is we're spending too much, not saving enough. The second pronged problem is that our expense profile is too high relative to what our retirement income is going to be. And so the shred method, what it does effectively is it begins to drive down what your expense profile is on a month by month basis. And at the same time, frees up discretionary income. So you're in effect making more money, and by making, I mean keeping more of it as opposed to sending it to your banker. And what happens is people can create certainty around their retirement future. So they know that they can afford what life looks like 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
I'm curious to know now what will be, because if you're listening to a lot of financial advice, I love
Yeah.
listening to finance and so on, and you have okay, don't buy your Starbucks, and if you don't buy your Starbucks every single
Yeah.
day, then okay, you're gonna be miserable because you don't have your coffee, but at the same time you're going to have an extra $60 at the end of the week.
Yeah.
uh, and is plenty of this advice, and of course it makes sense, like
Yeah.
saving what really, like, don't spend in what doesn't matter to you. But
Sure.
do you have something that you work with your clients, or you help your clients with, where they can save money where they don't even know they could save money there,
Yeah.
which goes a bit like left side? I want to know the things that they're not mainstream.
Yeah.
Is there one or two areas that you can share right now?
Yeah. This is at the heart of how our system works in that. And I'll give you a metaphor, Simone, that might help. If I told you that your car was running outside your flat, what would you do?
My car was running outside my flat.
It was running like the engine was on, that
I would
the
go and turn off the car,
yeah. Why would you do that?
because, well, I'm wasting fuel. The battery is gonna go. The car is gonna be ruined if this stays on. All these
Yeah.
reasons.
Yeah, all the reasons, right? In essence, it's inefficient. For a
Yeah,
car to be running, you're burning gas, hard on the engine, hard on the environment. Someone might steal it, right? We just don't know. All of it is inefficiency. And yet, what we do as consumers is we make money, we put money into a checking account. The money sits there for days or weeks or months on end. All the while, there are other debts that are causing, causing us to pay out in interest.
sure.
And in effect, we're letting our money idle in the driveway being the checking account. So what the shred method does is it takes all that idle money that we have sitting in our account for days or weeks or months on end, and it finds the most efficient use for it, in effect, meaning that you're either saving the most or your ability to invest it for other cash flow purposes.
Hmm.
And so the way that we structure it is we go after our debts first, and our debts would be things like credit card debt, our car loans, our student loans if we have them, and ultimately the mortgage. And the reason we want to go after the mortgage is if you were to look at the amortization table of a mortgage. So you took 30 years of a mortgage and you set a traffic signal over that 30-year mortgage. The first 10 years are red light, meaning the majority of your payments going to interest.
Yeah,
The second 10 years are yellow light. Some goes to principal, some goes to interest. And the last 10 years are green light, where the majority of your payment is going to principal. And what the shred method does is it turns all of your payments into green light payments. So the majority is going into principal, which is decreasing the amount of interest you're paying, increasing the amount of equity or liquidity you have in your property, and therefore saving you tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in the process. And this is the kicker, you still have access to all that money because we're using a product that most people have access to and don't even know it, called a line of credit. And the line of credit effectively just becomes like your checking account had functioned previously.
Don't you have to pay for a line of credit? Do you have to pay interest for a line of credit?
So you do pay interest on a line of credit, but this is the magic of Shred, is that your income is funneling through that line of credit. So the balance may go up and down throughout the month, but you're paying interest on the average daily balance, which will be kept artificially low by the software.
That's fascinating. So make sure that
Yeah.
everyone checks the shredmethod.com. Definitely more information on how this works. I want to go back to money psychology because I
Yeah.
mean, we're still part of the money psychology here. Where do you see people actually not, even if they have, because some people they have the knowledge,
Hmm.
right? So you have your method, other people have their methods.
Yep.
Some of them are good, some of them are better than others, and so on. But it doesn't matter how many methods people learn.
Right.
Some people don't change or don't want to change or they are
Right.
stuck or what do you think is the reason why this happens?
Yeah. Well, I think whether we know it or not, we took on stories and scripts and messaging from our parents and our surroundings and our relatives over the years. There is a statistic out there right now that says that our money personality is set by the age of 9 years of age. So if you think about what we've listened to, um, what we've listened to throughout our young formative years could be things like, a good friend of mine heard this over and over again. Well, we'll never have a lot of money, so we might as well spend it now. And think about how circular that logic is, Simone. We'll never have a lot of money, so we might as well spend it now, because we'll never have a lot of money, so we might as well spend it now. And you can imagine, as soon as any amount of money comes into their account, what do they do with it? Goes right back out again, right?
Mhm.
And so I think deep down, we have a script. We don't know where it comes from, but it's there. I read recently that on average, our unconscious or subconscious mind will absorb 1 million bits of information per second. And it's things we don't even know. It's an ad, it's the title of a book, it's someone said something over our shoulder at a coffee shop. All of that our subconscious mind is taking in. And our conscious mind can only process about 50 to 100 bits of information per second. So some of those things go in and they just swirl around and become part of our story. And I think for a majority of consumers out there, they're operating on a script that was someone's truth, but it's not the truth. And
Mhm.
so they take it as their truth as opposed to the truth. And an example of that might be, I'll always have a mortgage. I'll always have credit card debt. I'll always have a student loan. That is someone's truth, but it doesn't have to be the truth. And it definitely doesn't need to be your truth.
How hard is this to change? Or how
Well,
easy?
it's not easy. It's
Right.
not easy. It is simple, but it's not easy. And here's what I mean by that. Simply stated, we have to dig into what the roots were. What were the messages we heard growing up? And so one of the questions we like to ask clients of ours on the coaching side are things like, tell me about your earliest money memory. What do you remember when you were a kid? Something that just happened right away. Do you have one that comes to mind?
Oh
One of the
yeah.
earliest memories of money that you have. What was going on?
I think that the first one is my parents saying no because I always wanted to buy toys, and my parents say no, always saying no, we don't have enough money, we cannot buy it. That's one of the first memories that I have.
Yeah. Yeah. So they said no. Did they tell you why? Or was it just like, no, you can't have that?
No, just said we don't have enough. We don't have enough.
Don't have enough. Yeah. And here's what's interesting is that culturally in Italy, as an example, maybe that was the norm, is to say, no, I'm sorry, we don't have enough money for that right now. And a child will go, oh, okay, right now we don't have enough. Maybe later we will. I'll ask again. In the United States, culturally, one of the things that a parent will say to a child is, you don't need that. And I remember hearing, now I didn't hear this, but I've had a number of clients that will say over and over again, oh, my parents told me all the time I didn't need something. And we will go down one of two paths with I don't need that swimming around in our ears. One is I will deny myself the finer things in life as I get older because there are things I don't need, right?
Mhm.
That's just something that that we were programmed to believe. The other path we might go down is someone will say, when I start making money, I'm going to buy whatever the heck I want. Right. And then they end up in credit card debt and they're using loans to buy things that they want, thinking they need them or just to prove someone wrong. And so this is how we have to like dial into that idea of what did we hear growing up, and was it true? Was it true just in the moment? Did our parents give us context around what they told us? And then how can we recreate that scenario in a way that's healthy and profitable and abundant for us? So like as an example, if you grew up, Simone, believing we don't have enough for things, you might create a situation where there's not enough money for the things you want. And what I mean by that is maybe you'll take yourself out to nice dinners, you'll buy things that you want that are not that expensive, but when it comes time to buy the thing that you really want, you don't have enough money because you've made all the decisions
Mhm.
to make sure you don't have enough money. Does that make sense?
100%, and it's incredibly true. It's
Yeah.
incredibly true, and it's something that I need to be very aware because I started reading, being cautious or understanding more about my money psychology about 3, 4 years ago. That's when I started taking it seriously,
Yeah.
and that's why I asked you how easy it is to change,
Yeah.
because I found personally, and I might be still on this journey, but it's still there. So it's there,
Yeah.
but I can recognize it when it's there. I can recognize and be aware more of my choices. I can question my choice. I can stop myself before making that decision most of the time. And
Yes.
so I've seen the improvements, but the initial reaction, so the initial,
Yeah.
I'm going to buy this because then I don't have the money for what I need or for what I really want and so on. It
Right.
happens. But then there is a moment where I can stop it and I can say, oh, why
Yeah.
am I spending this money? What can I do with this money instead?
Yes.
And now I'm starting going there more and more often in that place. So do
Yes.
you think it's something that can be completely replaced, or is it something that you just learn how to manage better to the point
Mm.
that it doesn't affect you as much anymore?
I think it's a little bit of both. Um, and I'll give you an example of why I think this is really important for your listeners. Because if you're a speaker, you're an author, you're a coach, a consultant, an expert in any way, there is someone who, no matter how much you said your services were, they would say it's too expensive. And then there is someone that you would throw your number out, what you think is your biggest number, right? It's a 30,000 or 50,000 or $100,000 package. And someone would say, gosh, that's cheap.
Yeah.
Based on what you're telling me you're going to offer me, that's super cheap. So for consultants and coaches, one of the things that I will often coach them on in terms of money psychology is how much is a lot? If I said to someone, if I asked you to write me a check, how much would a lot be right now? And I'll get varying answers. Some will say $5,000 a lot, 10,000, 50,000 would be a lot, right? Whatever the number is, what I want you to do is figure out, how do I get to the next plateau where that doesn't seem like a lot, this seems like a lot. Because as you do that, you'll start to attract more and more abundance into your life to allow that amount of money to show up for you. So this seems silly, but I keep stacks of money, and this is just movie theater. I'm holding up movie theater prop money, but it's $2,000 bundles of it. And I have about $20,000 sitting in my desk drawer because I will often set it out and have my kids look at it and say, do you think that's a lot of money? And they'll say, yeah, it looks like a lot. And I'll say to them, it's not. This is an amount of money that you should be able to set aside in a year's time if you're performing right, you know? But the number of people that could set aside 20 grand or 30 grand or 50 grand a year is probably very minimal.
Yeah.
And so some of that is coming to grips with that our money psychology is like a thermostat, and it's set at a certain temperature, quote unquote, a certain amount of like, I'm going to make six figures this year, or I'm going to make 500,000 this year, or I'm going to make 1 million this year. Your thermostat is set at a certain amount, and you will do just enough to hit that number. And if it feels like you're going over that, you'll regulate it back down. So I think it's something to consider.
It is, and it's so true. And I think that one of the best things, that's why I said at the beginning of this introduction, the introduction of the show, anytime we talk about money, it is a reflection a lot of ourselves. There is a lot of lessons and learning in terms of how you actually live your life. This goes deeper than just it is a number in the account or it is a piece of paper. It is a
True.
sign of our behavior, our psychology, how we have been raised, our habits, what we value, what we appreciate in the world. There is so much around it. So I'm really excited about this particular topic. And you said that there is a thermostat on the top. Is
Yeah.
there also a thermostat on the low? So do you have a bandwidth or is just on the top? I'm thinking about, for example, if there is a thermostat of how much you allow yourself to go into debt compared to how much
Ah,
you allow yourself to earn.
oh boy. I've never considered this. Um, and the reason why, I think you're probably right. I think there is a lower threshold, but I don't know that it's the number. I think it's the how much am I willing to pay on a monthly basis. And the language I like to use around this, Simone, is um, that people will payment themselves into a corner. You've heard of
Mhm.
painting yourself into a corner.
Yeah,
People will
yeah, yeah.
payment themselves into a corner where they think, I can afford the payment, so I'll buy this. And you do that 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 times. And now all of a sudden, the payments are pretty much eating you alive. And there's not enough left over at the end of the month to really do anything to get yourself out of it. It's like you have to have a really big shovel to fill in a really big hole. And people are trying to fill in this big hole with a tiny little shovel because they don't have enough left over. So I think there is probably a lower level on the thermostat, lower register, but I often find that people get to that point unbeknownst to themselves until it's almost too late.
Very true. I agree. I agree. I agree. I thought about that because it's not something I thought about until we had this conversation before. And I have this joke with my wife where so both me and my wife are into fitness. Uh, Different reasons why we are into fitness. She will have her own, I have mine, but we both have something that our weight as human being can fluctuate, right? So
Yeah,
you have
right,
moments in your life where you're a bit fitter and moments where you're a bit chubbier. It's like it goes through periods depending on how much I'm focusing on my health and my well-being and my body.
right.
But I have a thermostat of I look at myself in the mirror, it's like, this ain't good. And I know, and my wife is the same. So I can keep myself in a good, healthy body weight because I have this thermostat that it doesn't matter. I look at myself in the mirror, it's like, oh boy,
Yes.
you really let yourself go right now. And it's the same when I look at sometimes at a bank account. I'm like, oh boy, you make some stupid financial decision,
Yeah.
rein back in. And the
Yes.
more I learn about money, the less stupid financial decision I'm making, and the more the upside of the better financial decision I'm making.
Yes.
And that's where I was thinking about that.
Yes. 100%. My wife and I will often talk about that in terms of how much needs to be visible at any point in time for her to feel safe and secure. And so, by the nature of the method that I teach, there are times where we will have a fair amount on our line of credit. It might be 20 or 30 or $50,000, but it's all been leveraged into an investment that's
Yes.
probably going to make somewhere between $500 and $750 a month extra in cash flow, right? And so, and then there may be a sale or a disposition 2 years from now, which returns 75,000 on the 50,000 we put in. So those kinds of things are happening all the time. But my wife will look at it and say, this makes me really nervous.
Mhm.
And what she's saying is, we've gone below her thermostat number and need to beef it up to a number that she feels comfortable with. So one of the money psychology questions that I would have your listeners ask each other, Simone, is ask your significant other, how much money do you need in savings to feel safe and secure at any given point in time? Because typically a man's number is going to be lower than a female's number. And if there
Yep.
is a large discrepancy between those numbers, there will almost always be some level of conflict in the relationship around money. And so coming to grips with what is the number in that thermostat range that feels good for both of you, agreeing on that and then making sure that's in there will or should resolve things relationally between you and your spouse.
This is, I think this becomes a great way also to wrap up the interview because I can talk to you all day. I love the way you talk about money. I love the way you explain it. It's very simple, very understandable. Some people they throw out too much jargon for someone who is not an insider to be able to understand. It's like, okay, the
Yeah.
concept is simple. You have a line of credit that you can access to. You can use this line of credit to make some investment that are going to or pay off other credit cards or
Yep.
mortgages or things that where their interest is higher than what you're paying on the line of credit. You manage it in
Yep.
balance. So understand is something that everyone I think can get their head around by the simplicity. Some financial models are
Yeah.
very complex, and I love what you said about having those conversations. Those conversations are not easy to have with someone else, but they are in particular with your significant other, with some family members,
Yeah.
but in particular for your spouse and your partner. And I consider myself incredibly lucky because I was raised by a family that didn't have a lot of financial, no, like I didn't know what a credit score was until I met my wife.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
and then it was way deep in the red because I had credit cards unpaid and so on. So
Yeah.
my journey to get my credit score well into the green has been very interesting and intense at the same
Yeah.
time. But I was very lucky because my wife grew up from a family where money financial awareness was present from since she was a child. So
Mm.
her mom, for example, would every time she would do a chore, she would get her to submit an invoice so then she could get a payment, and then her mom will put that money into their saving account for the kids. So she
Beautiful.
was raised the exchange of service. I'm giving you a service. I'm
Yes.
raising an invoice for you. And that was one of the things that was based in their family.
Yes.
So imagine when I met my wife, my financial awareness over here, her financial awareness was there. She was asking all these questions. I felt so small. I felt so small in that moment. As a man, damn, I felt small.
Right.
But damn, it helped me grow. I embraced the challenge and I said, okay, these are things that I can turn around. And some I'm still working on, but it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
A lot of them turned around in a very positive way. But that's also why I feel very lucky, but also having the openness.
Yeah.
Prayer for men. It's not easy to have this
Right.
conversation with the important one. Don't
I
know if you.
think your statement brings up a point too, Simone, which is we are all raised in different households. So your 0 to 9 was vastly different than her 0 to 9. And if we marry someone and we assume, oh, we're definitely on the same page, there are a lot of different things that happen growing up around money that have to be brought up and talked about. But I think just again, as a takeaway for your listeners, ask your significant other, what was your earliest money memory? What did you hear your parents talk about around money? If this is one of my favorites, if money were a person and you met money walking down the street, it came walking towards you or it knocked on your front door, what would money look like when you opened the door and saw money standing there in human form? And the relationship someone has with money will generally be articulated in their answer. Because it could be, oh, I'm scared of this person coming to the door, or they're an old friend. I love seeing them. And we have a great time every time they're around.
This is such a great conversation, such a great conversation about money. So give us a bit more detail about what people can find at GTeX at the shredmethod.com, because I mentioned it a few times at the beginning, throughout. So shredmethod.com, everyone can check it also in the show notes.
Yeah.
But what can people have access to once they land on the website and once they register?
Yeah. I'm really proud of what we have on the site, Simone. The first thing you'll go to is a savings calculator, which basically, if you plug in what your monthly expenses are, your income, and these are very raw numbers, and what your mortgage payment is, it will essentially spit out how fast you could be out of debt and how much overall interest you could save by using the system. We also have a master class there on the site. So if you're intrigued by the number and you want to know how does this work, you can watch a 25-minute master class taught by me that will share the ins and outs of how the software works. And then if you are still intrigued and want more info, we have the opportunity to book a 20-minute call with one of our coaches who will walk you through the process and tell you, just how much is possible by using the system.
Sounds like something that everyone should do right now. So check it out, the shredmethod.com. The link as well is in the show notes. Adam, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here on the show, and I really enjoyed the interview. Really enjoyed the
Like,
conversation.
likewise, the pleasure's mine. Thanks for having me.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much for watching or listening. A couple of things. If you haven't subscribed to the show, make sure you subscribe straight away so you don't miss any other episode. Also, leave us a review, a good 5-star review. You know, reviews are the lifeblood of every show. It's good for the guest, it's good for the show, it's good for my ego, it's good for everyone. And then finally, check out all the resources in the show notes. Until next time, remember that together we grow exponentially. Ciao.